Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the W podcast. This is going to be episode 5. We had a banger of an episode in episode 4. You can check this online. Check the links below. We have a separate channel for the podcast itself. So if you're interested, you can follow that. I'm Wolvy. I have SaucyJay here with me. We are the friendly neighborhood healers. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of news that hit World of Warcraft in the recent days. And of course, the new patch that's coming up. Hi, how are you, SaucyJay? Let's start with that.
I'm doing well. Feeling good about some of these changes we're going to talk about, and did a little digging on the forums as well to kind of get the general sentiment of the community, and pretty mixed. So that's always going to be the case. But yeah, pretty well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine as well. There was a community event this week, Break the Meta, and I played a lot, or at least I tried, because it's hard to find keys in general, and it was even harder to find keys for Break the Meta. But yeah, in general, I had a blast. Even changed my perspective on healing a little bit, but we're gonna talk about this in the episode for sure. But let's start with one of the big topics. This was announced a few days ago already, and it concerns the changes to the crests and the gearing system, which Blizzard announced that they're going to release it in patch 11.0.7, which by the time you're watching this video, the patch is probably already out. And this is going to be the starting point for Season 2. So let's go through the changes first, and there are quite a few actually, all concerning crests and crafting. So first thing that they're doing, they're increasing the amount of crests that are going to be dropping for each of the dungeon levels. And the keystone level is going to matter. So the higher the keystone level, the more crests you're going to get. And then if you deplete the key, you're going to get subtracted 4 crests, which by itself is an improvement. So let's say that you do a plus 10, that's going to give you 16 gilded crests instead of 12. And then if you deplete, it's going to be 12. Another improvement, I guess, is that at a plus 12, instead of 16, you're going to be getting 20. That's basically going to speed up the crest acquisition a little bit. And then the other big change is that if you want to craft a gear, that special item that you're getting to be able to actually craft at the maximum item level, which costed 90 gilded crests before, it's now going to cost 60. So that means that you're not going to be spending your whole week of grinding crests for one crafted item. You're going to be spending 60, and then you're going to have 30 left. So that's basically in a nutshell. The other, I guess, thing that we need to mention here is that the achievement that's going to give you the discount to upgrade gear on your oaths for gilded crests, which required you to have a 639 item on each slot, which is basically unachievable for most of us, is now reduced down to 636, which means that for the slots where you're missing a mythic track piece, you're going to be getting a 636 crafted item now, so you can potentially get there, even if you're not there right now, considering that the crafting is going to be a bit cheaper. And Blizzard also posted what they're trying to do with this and what is their intention. So what are your takes on this, just reading this and now knowing how it's going to work, starting basically tomorrow?
My comments are pretty always like they're moving in the right direction or they're moving in the wrong direction. I never have like a very like this is the best, but I think these are positive changes based on community feedback or just I listened to a lot of podcasts and everybody was pretty much saying the same thing. Why do more than 8? Why do more than 10s for vault? Like there's no incentive unless you're pushing and then it's really rough when you're going for every single level because it's pushing. So I think this kind of changes it a bit. You get more for the more that you do. They didn't drop the Valor Stone numbers yet, I don't believe. But they said it's also going to be more per keystone. So that's good. The other thing is the depletion, I think, is amazing because it's going to incentivize people to just stick it out for the duration of the key, because it's not like you're only going to get 5, right? It felt very punishing to get 5 crests when, that's like, that was big. So I think those are really both positive things. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Well, I have some positives, but I also have some negatives. Let's start with the negatives. I guess since you already mentioned Valor Stones, there's no mention of Valor Stones here. So this whole post is only for crests, and that is very annoying because this week I played my ult, which is a Holy Paladin, and I tried to gear it for break the meta. So at some point, I managed to upgrade whatever gear I could with the crest that I have, and then I got a mythic track weapon in my vault. So I needed to upgrade that. This thing, which is a one-hander by the way, costs whatever crest you need, and then 100. No, it was 300 Valor Stones
Mhm.
per level to upgrade. 300 Valor Stones. So I updated once, and then I'm out of Valor Stones. I went and did all the quests around the world that give you like 20 or 30 Valor Stones. All right, now I'm at 150. What am I supposed to do? I figure out that if you loot chests, you can get like 1 or 2 Valor Stones from that. So I'm flying around looting chests, and like in 1 hour, I got from 150 to like 160. Like this was ridiculous because you're not getting a lot, right? You're just getting one or
Yeah.
two.
Yep.
I hope they said this is a starting point, but I hope it's a subject to change for season 2 because those Valor Stones they're obnoxious, and my shaman is sitting at 2,000. Like, there's nothing that I can do with them. All the sparks that I haven't used for crafting, I converted them with 250 Valor Stones to actual sparks, not just halves. I'm still capped, and there's nothing to do with them. I cannot trade them, and then my ults are starved. And I have the crests on them to farm. I'm gonna have even more crests now with the new system, but I'm gonna be lacking the Valor Stones, and there's no easy way to farm them, right? It's not just like, oh, let me go and do something, and then I'm gonna get some Valor Stones. I think if you get some in a dungeon where you get some IO score, or somebody gets an IO score, you get like 60 or 70,
Yeah.
but that's still so far away from the 300 that we need. So I
Yeah.
was kind of disappointed that we didn't see any changes to that, but I still have some hopes that this is potentially going to happen. The other thing that I kind of like don't like is that in the beginning of the season they actually increased the mythic track for the pieces for the upgrades from 4 item levels to 6 item levels, which basically means that you need more crests to upgrade a
Mhm.
piece once you get it. So now they're
Yeah.
giving us more crests, and we have been asking for more crests in the past, but they were not compliant. They would say, "Yeah, it's fine. We're not gonna give it to you." And now it feels a little bit like they messed up with this extra levels for the mid track, and now they're giving us a bone to chew on and say, "Oh, now we're gonna give you more crests." But this is not
Mhm.
giving us what we wanted back in the day. This is basically just fixing a problem that they kind of self-induced on themselves with this extra mythic tracks. And you mentioned community and stuff. One of the things that I kind of saw in many posts and many people that actually posted in the comments below our podcast is that um, it takes too long. It takes too long for your main to basically gear up, get the pieces. Maybe it's gonna be a little bit better now because the crafting gear is going to be easier to obtain. And then even if you craft something, you're still gonna have some crests left to upgrade. But I think that this is still going to be a slow process. So for the people that do not enjoy that long to gear their main, it's still not going to be a good experience. Maybe this is going to hit in the right places on your ults because you're going to have more crests and then you're going to need less of them to upgrade. But for your main, I think you're still going to be stuck in probably not 4 months to get everything upgraded, but now it's going to be like 3.5 months or something like that. And I'm not sure, like for us, we play all the time, so maybe that's not a problem. But for people who are a little bit more casual, that's maybe too long of a period. And yeah, I'll even mention that yeah, it takes too long for my main as well, but I'm not happy about it as well because at this point of the season, all I want to do is not gearing. I want to be pushing keys, and
Mhm.
I don't want to be handicapped by not having best gear and not having my pieces upgraded to the maximum possible level that they could be upgraded to. Right? The dungeons are hard enough as they are, so I don't want to be missing item track levels for upgrades or something like that. So from that perspective, I think, as you said, it's a step in the right direction. But maybe there's a lot more to be desired for this to be fully compliant and enjoyable by a broader audience of people.
Yeah, there's, I was talking to one of my friends the other day about, an MMO, and a lot of the MMO is based on grind, and WoW comes from a culture of grind, right? Like when you think back to the original game and kind of what it took to get max level, and then there was reputation, and then there was even tuning or tunements that you had to get for certain things, even in dungeons, right? You had to do certain things to be able to even unlock dungeons at one point in the game. So, the game culture has always come from a grindy perspective or just the design. And I feel like sometimes they want to maintain some of that because we mentioned this before, but there's a certain amount of pride and a certain amount of accomplishment that comes with the grind, especially when you complete. And so trying for them, I think, to try to balance that with um, the demands from the players, just saying, look, we just want to play the game. We just want to get in here and feel like we can compete. I got friends that say they want the old system where it's like when it drops, that's what you get. You can't upgrade it. You can't. It is what it is, and you can push your content. But those systems were around back in the day when there wasn't Mythic Plus, and so Mythic Plus brings this different element to the game where it's incrementally, or now maybe not incrementally, it's very big, upgrades every time you go to another higher key. And you can't do that with the same. You can do it with the same keys, but at a certain point, the math just doesn't play out. You're not going to be able to do the damage, or you're not going to be able to heal through it, or whatever. So those systems, there's an interaction there, and I think a lot of it comes through that. I don't even think with Mythic Raid, that the demand for the incremental gear. I mean, maybe they're tuning it a little bit, but you don't really see consistently harder hitting things in raid as you get to the ender bosses. You just see more different mechanics that maybe are a little harder. Maybe you do see some elements that are like you can't mess it up or you will get one shot. But the leveling of the gear really for me stems from the Mythic Plus, and I think it's intentional for that grind. So and that's why I think when you look back to what Ian said, he said, we like the system, we want to keep the system. They like that grind. They want players to feel like they have to grind. Even now, if they can make it this is again a step in the right direction, like you said. But I think I don't ever see them making it so week into the patch you got everything you want and you can just blast, because I fully anticipate, it's kind of getting off the subject a bit, but I anticipate when we hit CE this season, we're gonna have 4 or 5 people just retire, or just stop playing because
Standard.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're done. They got what they wanted, and they're done. So if people get to a place where they get the gear they want and it's exactly where they want it, they get their best in slot, and they hit a wall with pushing, they'll just log off and go play, some other game, or go to the gym or spend time with the family, whatever, right? They'll just stop playing. So I know that there's like this little, cheese dangling in front of people, or carrot dangling, and that's just the culture of WoW.
Yeah, well, to add to what you're saying, and one thing that we basically learned out since we started the podcast is okay, we have our opinions. Sometimes they're different. That's fine. But then there's usually a whole bunch of other people who have completely different takes and they play the game completely different than what we do. So I am sure that there's going to be people out there who are going to be enjoying the gear grind. They're going to be leveling their pieces, farming the crests, etc. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't, right? And then they don't push in Mythic Plus, right? So that's
Mhm.
probably totally fine. I don't know if for them those 4 months or whatever time it takes is too much or too low. But we also have to consider that Mythic Plus pushing is a grind of itself, because
Yeah.
once you're able to do the high keys, then you start looking for those keys, pushing them every day, and you're playing over and over again, which is just you're not grinding the gear now, you're grinding the keystone item levels, right?
The
So
community skill, yeah,
yeah, so from
it's
my
your grind.
perspective, this is a grind into another grind, right? And that's why
Mhm.
I think it's too much personally, because Right now, I want to be grinding the dungeons, but I'm still stuck in the previous grind, upgrading my gear, especially on my ults, etc. And I simply cannot push the higher keys because at some point, I know I can do it, but at some point I just start dying, and I'm like, yeah, maybe that's too low of a key to start dying like this. If I had more gear, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a topic that we can keep talking, I guess, for forever. But I'll add one more thing. This change, which feels kind of like a big change, right? It's not something small. Actually did this in a 0.07 patch, right? It's not like if you showed me this
Mhm.
in Shadowlands or something, I would say, okay, good or bad, that's a change that's like a 0.2 patch or something that's going to be
Yeah.
big, right? So it makes me very happy that they're mixing things up and making it such a big change basically in the middle of a patch or 0.407 patch, which to me is not a big patch because there's no new content for me, for
Yeah.
Mythic Plus or raids. I'm not
Nope.
that interested in the new island that we're going to be talking about in just a moment, but yeah, so that's a huge step, and I kind of like it, and I hope that as I said, we're going to see more changes, and maybe for the 0.2 patch, we're going to see Valor Stone changes or something like that.
I could have swore there was a comment that was made that said Valor Stones as well. Now they didn't get into the tidbits of like what Valor Stones, like how it was going to be changed, but there was a comment that said essentially that they're also going to be incremental. I think it was at the beginning of the article. I
Could
could
be.
be wrong. Oh yeah, right there, right there. Crest Gold Valor Stones now scale by keystone level, so they will.
All right, so
Right under
you're
change.
gonna be getting more Valar stones for dungeons as well. Okay, that's a good change. But it's a little bit pointless to me because if I do whatever item level dungeon, keystone dungeon, and I get some crests, and then I get enough Valor stones to upgrade the items from there, then it's kind of redundant. It's too many
Yeah,
currencies, and why do you
it
have
is.
the Valor stones? So I don't know. Maybe we'll see how it plays out. I just hope that I'm not basically bottlenecked by the Valor Stone as I am right now on my odds, because this
Yeah.
is very annoying. And
Yep.
the last thing that we can mention, this topic, I guess, is once you reach those caps, maybe figure out some way to make them war bound, even if you pay a tax, or something like that. Um,
Please.
yeah, because even this season, like I was at the cap of both Valor Stones and Crests on my main, but I kept doing dungeons for whatever reason. I needed IO score or I needed an item. So all this grind and all those resources are basically wasted, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
they're reducing. So if you have a lower crests and you want to upgrade them to a higher crest, before you had to pay 90 to get 15. So now they're reducing this to 45 to get 15. So maybe do some kind of attacks like that as well. But let's say at the end of the dungeon, you get, let's say, 20 gilded crest, which is going to be a plus 12, and you time the dungeon. If you're at the cap and you get those 20, maybe just give 5 as a warbound currency or something like that, so that at least you can use them on your ults, even if it's
Yep.
like in this huge type of tax that you're paying, but it's not gonna feel like they're wasted and you wasted your time.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
obviously they're not gonna remove the caps at the start of the season, so at least something like this, it's gonna be a huge step forward.
Yep. I
All right.
agree.
So let's go to the next topic, which is going to be the new zone, the Siren Island, which, it's something. There's going to be some dailies, there's going to be some achievements. Personally, I'm not very interested in that. I'm going to go and do it because I do achievements, but it's not what's going to get me excited. The thing that kind of excited me was the new ring that we're going to get. And it's basically a ring that's going to have 3 sockets, and you can put different gems in those sockets, and they're going to have different effects. Now, the effects are very interesting, a little bit more interesting than the previous iteration that we had in the Forbidden Reach in Dragonflight, which had a similar mechanics with similar ring. They're going to give you stats, and then they're going to give you some extra damage, some extra healing, some extra mitigation if you're tank, the regular stuff. And my biggest note for this ring was that I understood that it's going to take 6 weeks to get it from the starting point, which I think was 619, all the way up to 639. And I was very excited about this new ring until I find out that it takes 6 weeks, because it means that if we start getting it tomorrow, it's gonna be like the end of January when you get it to max level.
Yep.
So that kind of put me back. I was very disappointed. I was like, I don't know if I even want to do this, because I'm not gonna use the 619 ring on even on my ults right now, right? So it's gonna be pointless. It's gonna be weak. And even some of the simulations that people did showed that the ring is not that powerful. You know, it for some classes maybe, but for others definitely not. And then Blizzard came up with this post, like we were expecting them to buff the ring. And they kind of did by pushing the starting item level to 639. And now in 6 weeks, when you fully upgrade it, it's going to go to 658. So that means that this is probably going to be a very, very powerful ring, and potentially even side effects, on the side. So that now makes me a little bit more excited, because obviously you're gonna get a higher item level item. You're not gonna be starting low, and potentially it's gonna get even more powerful. So this now actually feels like a small bump, like a small buff that you're getting, no matter if you're doing Deus, Mythic Plus, or Raid. You're gonna get some extra oomph from this ring, so to speak, which was not the case before, and it's only going to get more powerful. So that's another iteration. That's another change that they're doing in the PTR before the release. That's also something to point out. They're not going to do this after they release it. So I guess that's another step in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel like two thoughts here. First one's super disappointing because it's literally copy paste from the last expansion, which is kind of like, okay, we did that at the end of Dragonflight, where like we had the same dungeons, we had the same tier sets, we had the same look at the tier sets, like copy paste. Then we get here and it's like it's the same thing. Um, so that's a bit disappointing, but the change I think was huge for them in the sense of it went from, players that, run tens and up and heroic and mythic raid. They went from not doing this. They weren't going to do this content because it didn't sim. So what's the point unless you were going to get achievements, right? There's no performance increase to this, which then basically makes it mandatory. Like every single person doing keys, every raider will go and do it and get it to the max level because they have to, right? So that's a huge difference in seeing people on that island. Because I'll be honest, I had no intention on going in its first state, and with this ring change, it's like you don't have a choice really.
Yeah, and I was a little bit scared as well, because if the ring started low, obviously there's gonna be no rush for people to go and get it. So what are they
Yeah.
doing? They're counting on the quest to keep us engaged through like end of
Nobody.
February or something, which
No
because
way.
it's kind of like the middle of the season right now. I mean, it's probably going to work for some people, but it was definitely not going to work for me. And then
Yeah.
there was one more change they announced. The gems that you're going to be getting from this island, and you're going to be socketing into the ring, they're going to be warbound until equipped now. So that's another thing that we mentioned back in the past, but we were hoping that this ring is going to be old friendly, because okay, you take you bite the wood and you go and farm the island on your main, but then if you have to do everything again on your ults, and it's exactly the same grind, exactly the same quests, and exactly the same RNG probably to get the right gems to drop for you, that's gonna be very annoying. So that's another step in that direction, and I'm actually very excited. It's actually going to be an upgrade for my main as well, because I don't have two mythic level rings, but it's going to be a huge boost for some of my ults, which have crappy rings that are not
Yeah.
even, probably hero track. So that actually is a very big step that makes me very excited to play my ults, maybe to try something different. And with just those two simple changes, basically, it makes me looking forward now to this, instead of like thinking, oh my god, it's going to take 6 weeks to fully upgrade the ring. Why? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
a very positive change in general. All right, and then we'll see how the island by itself plays. But we can jump to the next topic, and that's gonna be the class tuning that they announced. Um, This is basically new for this specific week. They even made some adjustments to it. And we can talk about maybe some of the changes to the DPS classes, but the main point that I'm going to make here is once you read through this article, you're going to find out that there are no nerfs this time. So they're only buffing underperforming classes. And that by itself just feels good, right? You're not scared that you're going to see your class there and know that there's going to be a nerf coming and you're going to feel less powerful, which happened to some of the DPS specs on Shaman. So that didn't feel well. And I was always an advocate of, when something is wrong, unless it's like very wrong and you need a big nerf, just don't nerf the well-performing classes. Just buff everyone else, make them feel good as well. Because obviously, if you're a little bit overpowered, your class feels good, and if you're not, you're just sitting there waiting for help, right? So give help to the people who are waiting, but then don't make the people who are already playing the game and feeling good feel bad, right? So I think this is going in that direction. There are some interesting changes, as I said, to the DPS classes. Devastation Evoker is getting a buff, or damage increased by 4%. This, for example, sounds a little bit weird to me because we have Devastation Evoker in raid. They're pumping, they're not that often seen in M plus because of AUG, which is their main problem, but I think they're pumping there as well. And now all of a sudden they're buffing this class. Same as Marks Hunter. I just mentioned Break the Meta. So in Break the Meta, hunters were allowed to play Beastmaster and Survival, but they were not allowed to play Marks Hunter, right? Because in their eyes, obviously Marks Hunter is meta and it's performing well, etc. So now I see a meta class getting buffs. So that's also interesting to me. I'm not sure whether or not those buffs are there just because those classes are not being played that much, not because they're not powerful. So that's an interesting question to raise. Moving to the healing stuff, I guess. Holy Paladin is getting some love. Veneration healing is increased. Saved by the Light is going to absorb a little bit more damage. Consecrate damage increased. So that is also interesting. I guess Holy Paladin needed that. But all changes that are going to be quite welcome. This one is probably more PvP, but Tempered Team Battle is not going to trigger with crowd control effects. So a class that's also not at the bottom, I don't think Holy Paladin was at the bottom of the list of the healers, but they're getting some buffs, so that's pretty good. Maybe you can talk about the Holy Priest changes, because I don't play that much.
Yeah, I think this one's really focused on Mythic Plus. Flash Heal is perfectly fine where it's at in the raid. Holy Fire, you don't really do it in the raid, really. I don't. I'm Flash Heal and heal, and then my Holy Words. But in Mythic Plus, you do use Holy Fire often. So I think this is I think most of these changes are really hyper focused, in my opinion, on Mythic Plus and shaking up the meta a bit and trying to get. The totemic surging. I mean, you could talk about that because you're shaman, but most of these feel like they're trying to get to changed up the meta numbers a bit and get more representation for some of these classes that aren't there.
Now that you said Mythic Plus, I'm just gonna add this to the topics. I see the Holy Priest buffs, and yes, they're probably towards Mythic Plus, but I'm always scared when I see something like this because we got one of the best priests, I guess, in the world to come back and play with us in the raid. He quit for a tier. And this guy's insane, man. Like, he's always parsing like 99s, like no joke, no joke. He even if you're pressing your buttons as hard as you can, you're just trying to keep up with him, right?
Yeah.
So every time, and he just came back, he did a 99 parse on our Kaiveza kill, standard. It's not 100. But when I see this, I'm like, this is going to affect him in raid, because I know he casts some flash heals in raid. So now, instead of 99 and gapping everybody else by a margin, now he's gonna be even more powerful. I'm like, damn, is that necessary? But I don't play Holy Priest, and he's insane, right? So, but yeah, I just figure we can add this as a topic for future talks. But some of those changes are not gonna be specific for M plus. They're targeted there, but they're gonna affect everything else. So,
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's
Yep.
interesting how this is going to play out. Yeah, and then Restoration Shaman Totemic, the Surging Totem mana cost is reduced by 25%. I had people come and ask me, oh, is that going to solve the Resto Shaman mana problems? No, boys. You're still Resto Shaman. You're still going to have mana problems. But this is going to make it a little bit better. Because this is basically a spell that actually costs a lot of mana. I don't know if you've looked into the mana cost, but this is a very expensive spell. So, and you're casting it on cooldown, so this is going to help a tiny bit. But don't think that you'll be like a holy paladin now and you'll never drink water again.
Oh, yeah.
Not gonna happen. All right, and then we have some affliction warrior buffs, but I guess that's one thing that another spec that not many people play. So we'll see how that plays out.
Play it. I love it, but
yeah. All right. So let's talk about Mythic Dungeons tunings, which are going to be live basically as you're listening to this already. And those are actually interesting because they're reducing the damage of many abilities that happen in Mythic Plus. That was just announced a few hours ago, by the way. And most of them are going to be the tank busters in the different dungeons that basically can not one-shot your tank, but if they're not using their defensives, they're definitely going to perish. I learned that the hard way trying to play my protection paladin. So, cultivated poison in Arakara, which is not a tank buster, but this is the AoE that some classes can dispel, others cannot. So this damage is reduced by 10%. I think that's quite welcoming, specifically for priests, for example, that cannot dispel it. Even like shamans right now, because the poison cleansing can only be used once in a while, so it's not like you can do every other. So I think this is one of the points where many PUGs struggle because it's not easy to coordinate the boss. Yes, it's personal responsibility, but then people running out of range, they're overlapping the waves that come out of the poisons with each other, they're killing each other, right? So maybe this is going to make it a little bit better. Then moving on to City of Threats, and feel free to jump in if you have some interesting points on these. But jumping on City of Threats, the tank booster on the first boss is getting reduced by 20%, which I guess this is one of the hardest hitting boss abilities for tanks. Always welcome. I did have some tanks that died there in the runs that I've done, so maybe that's gonna make it better. The boss is hard enough as it is already. The big bug on the stairs before the third boss chamber, whatever, it's also having its venomous periodic spray damage reduced. So if you don't have poison dispel, another huge win, I guess. Moving on to Green Bateau, the Flame Renderer's Shallow Flame slash initial damage is reduced by 20%. Sorry, 25%. So another welcome change. I guess the double Flame Renderer pool, which some people skip. And that makes the huge difference in your Green Bateau runs, by the way, because if you pull them, you usually wipe. Maybe that's going to be more manageable now. This is probably the scariest mob in there, although not every tank realizes that because they are, let me pull that on top of this big pool, you know? What could happen, you know? Yeah. It's not like we have curse dispels going on at the same time that people have to deal with the interrupts. Different topic. Then the Molten Giants, their Lava Fist tank burst damage is also reduced. I don't know about this one. Like, usually I don't lose tanks on the Molten Giants, but, you know, it's a change that we can welcome. The Mistveil Guardians and Mists of Tyrnaside, those are the Guardians that you see in the mace in some of the packs. They have a huge tank booster, and when you get two of them, the tank is taking more damage, etc. They can chunk your tank. Like, they're doing something every, I think it's 10 or 12 seconds. And you have two of them, it's double. So I have DBM on my Prot Pally when I play it in this Mists of Tyrnaside. And basically, it tells me use a defensive when there's a tank buster. When you put two of these, DBM is going like crazy. Use the defensive. Use the defensive. Use the defensive. I'm like, dude, I ran out of defensive like
nothing else
30 seconds ago. What am I supposed to do now? You know. So that's a good change as well. Siege of Brawling, the curse blades, their slash damage vulnerability is reduced by 10%, down to 10 from 15. So another one that is welcome. I don't think that causes too much problems. Although I did some high Siege of Brawling skis with the tank that we were on Discord. And when we pulled the curse blades, he was like, watch me, I'm gonna get hit." So he was actually very scared with them on high keys. So another welcoming change, and then a lot of changes to Stonevolt. It's mostly the trash mechanics where the tank gets smacked with the debuffs, etc. But then also the Master Machinist tank booster Ingenious Hammer is also reduced. We did talk last time about how tanks are scarce in Mythic Plus in general, maybe because they're the changes that happen and they got kind of nerfed this season, but also because there are a lot of mechanics that basically one-shot them, and if you're learning the dungeons, you get one-shotted, people start yelling at you, and you break the key. Maybe this is going to help in that direction, and I don't think it's going to bring back tanks to play, but it's at least going to make it easier for people who are already trying to play tank and learn it, and maybe ease up a little bit the Mythic Plus difficulty when we're trying to push keys.
Yeah, I think so. My thought on this is I like the changes in general. I think it's really pug friendly. I think it's a little bit of balance for tank and healing. Even the kicks, like the Shadow Claw there they're talking about going from increase to 2.5 seconds instead of 1. So I like it. But when I was going through the forums, it was really mixed. There was a lot of people that are like, this is way too late. These are good changes, but it's like mid to end of the season. Are people going to come back? All those people that were doing keys before, they're going to come back because of these changes? Maybe, maybe not. So there's a lot of cynical kind of feedback on the forums. My personal feeling is I think they're good changes. I'd like to see them happen about as frequent as we're seeing class tunings. We see class tunings pretty regularly. And I think some of these dungeon tunings should happen a bit earlier if they feel like they need to be changed, not at the release of a new dot of a patch. So again, it's another one of the things where I'd rather them do it than not do it. And I think it will help, but I hope it's enough to start to bring people back, which
Yeah,
I don't know if it is.
I don't think, like, if you're reading this and you're a tank, that's not gonna bring you back, right? It's not big enough. But if you're playing and now everything is getting a little bit easier, I think that's gonna be a huge step forward. So it's another step in the right direction. But I guess what we can agree on, it's good. But then we want to see that more often and maybe more changes, because
Sure. Yep.
I did actually like playing my Pally, which is basically under geared for like 13th and 14th at this point, because I'm like only 625 or something, so I'm not 635. Basically, I'm missing 10 item levels or so, right? And I kind of got a wild take on healing, because we were talking last time about how all the one shots type of damage is kind of gone, and now everything is pulsing damage, etc. But playing my Pally, I was hoping that there's like one shot. So if people cannot survive it, they die and we're done. And I'll address, like, for example, the first boss in Arakara, or the pulsing boss in Dawnbreaker, right? When you go into high keys and people are under geared and they don't use their defensives, they basically just rot down. They die no matter, like, I'm popping my cooldowns, I'm prepared, I have something to heal, and they still die, right? And it's maybe because they're under geared, maybe because I'm not geared enough so I could heal for more. But I kind of more enjoyed bosses like the third boss in Siege of Borealis, where the breakwater hits you for all the damage that it does, and if you survive it, you survive it. If you die, you die, but that's it, So it's a different dynamic. It's a different take from what I had from the previous week, but that was kind of a revelation that I had, because I did like this 14 Siege of Borealis, and we were talking on comms with our healer, because he was a friend of mine. He was like, pop this, and if you survive, you survive. Like, he doesn't even have to heal you after that. The maintenance, healing, etc., that's gonna top you off.
Yeah.
And that felt chill, although people do panic on this boss, and like it hits and they pop health pots, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why? But that doesn't matter, right? So I was, and then there was those rot bosses that would just kill your whole party, and then everybody would blame the healer, and I would be
Oh
like,
yeah.
bro, I pop my divine toe, and then I spammed the empowered holy shocks at you, and you still died. What am I supposed to do? And this kind of makes every healer now feel like a discipline priest, to me. And that's a wild take again, but the way the discipline priest works, and you know this the best, but if there is a big AoE that's coming, you have to spread your atonements, which usually just casting radiance. Then you have to do a mind blast to turn your smite into void blast, which does more damage and heals for more. And then you have to pop your mind bender to do even more damage and more healing. And if you set this up correctly, just as the damage is coming, you just press your penance and your void blast, and you can heal to everything. Right? It doesn't matter if people are pressing defenses or not. You're godlike. But if you are late, if the damage happens and you're those 3 buttons behind, you're not catching up. Everybody's gonna be dead by the time the pulsing stops. Right? So from that perspective, basically every healer now feels like a disciplined priest, because those huge damage checks, those huge pulsing damages that happen in the dungeons, even if you're not playing disc, you need to know, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do now. No matter what healer I'm pressing, this is the cooldowns that I'm going to be using. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to heal through it. And if you don't do that and the damage happens, even if you are a reactive healer, usually there's no catching up, right? I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic. I don't think the solution here is bring back the one shots, but I just had a very unpleasant experiences in the last week, trying to heal through burst damage on different healers, and even if I had everything prepared, people would still die. So I'm not sure what to say here, but that was just an interesting revelation that happened to me.
It's always fun when you change classes and kind of like, every single class has their specialty for certain damage types and being able to work through it. It's always interesting. That's why I feel like discipline's it's hard and easy in the sense where you have to understand the timers, like you just said. But if you do understand the timers and the rotation, you're good to go. So it's pretty easy from there. So,
but yeah,
every single one has different.
Even as disc, and that actually stands true for all those healers. Even if you plant everything correctly, if you miss one global, if you misclick one of your buttons, you're done. Everybody wipes.
Even it's funny. I didn't want to nitpick, but because I'm disc and you're not disc, but when you actually mind blast after the pet, I don't know if you know that, because you get this thing called torment, which does a pretty good amount of healing and damage. And so the rotation is just a little bit different. But I know when I don't do my rotation right, it does make a big difference. Those torments help a lot, not only in damage but in healing. It's massive. So it's very unforgiving to your point. Like if you don't do it right, it can like you say, it can cause a wipe.
Yeah, I do not play that high keys on this, so I guess it's fine if I cast my mind blast, even if it's wrong. People still survive. But like if I don't cast it, or if I'm late, that's what I'm trying to get to, because that's true for every healer. Like if you misclick one of your buttons in heavy AoE, especially in higher keys, it's done. Everybody dies. So this feels a little bit too punishing. Even yesterday we did a green bateau, and the tank jumped into a big pack. He got deleted, like one-shotted, insta. And he was like, oh, sorry, I didn't press my defensive. And obviously we all wiped, and because it's a high key, I mean higher than 7, that's like 1 minute or something on the timer. So it feels like those, and it's one mistake, right? It's a one small mistake that he made, wiped us, basically cost us the timer and the key potentially. So it feels a little bit too punishing. And those are even not that high keys, it's just like 10s, 11, 12s. It's not like we're pushing 15, 16s or world first keys and like 19s. So I don't know, that adds to the bug unfriendliness a little bit. And I'm not sure what they can do to make it a little bit easier, but that is another topic that, it's pushing people away, and it's not going to make them come back into the game.
I do think this will help the high keys push even higher, though, a bit more, where they're right now blocked because the damage is unhealable. We'll start to see high keys push a little bit higher starting next week.
It's interesting if we would, because a lot of people are basically done at this point. They've done whatever they've done, and they're not coming back until next patch or something. Um,
Well, the 1%, the 0.1%
yeah,
will still push, right?
we'll see, because like if you're very high, if you push your high keys and you know that they're not gonna move you out of this 0.1% in this
That's true.
remaining, yeah,
Yeah,
you're not coming back, right?
that's
So
true. Yeah.
I think the people who are still playing, they're gonna continue playing, but even if you're like high key pusher, and then because even for them, it's a problem. Like, this is a game that we don't play, and we don't know what they're doing, but you still have to assemble your team. You still have to bring everybody back. Maybe you
Yep.
still have to
Yep.
relearn something.
Yep.
And so it's an interesting dynamic, because all those changes they did to the gearing, to the crests, it's maybe somewhat good for people who like the grind, but for those people, they grinded their gear, they were done in like the first month and a half, and now they're
Yep.
gone.
Yep.
So maybe this is what Blizzard is pushing towards too. So they're fine, the season is over, now go play something else and then come back for the next patch. Maybe this is the business model that they're trying to push to, and those other things could be Classic or Season of Discovery or something like that. Maybe Plunderstorm
Mhm.
that's coming back. Maybe it's different games. But I guess I don't know how many are out there like me, but I'm like this one game Andy, because that's all I play. So I don't want to go play Plunderstorm or Classic. I would play Classic if it was connected, but it's not, right? We've talked about this before. I don't want to play other games. So, maybe having something a little bit more for people like me is it's gonna be welcoming. But maybe I'm there's not that many people like me anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been playing that Path of Exiles lately, so I still get in the game. We did our alt raid tonight, and we got raid again tomorrow. But whenever I get a little downtime, I'm in Path of Exiles.
yeah,
It's good,
I guess that's one of the reasons why there were not that many people in Break the Meta Week, because everybody's playing
I
this
didn't do
game.
one. I didn't do one key
Yeah,
as
I know.
any. I
I
didn't do
did a
any.
lot, man. I played my Elemental Shaman. I pushed there. Then there was this one group that swooped everyone. They had Elemental Shaman, so I'm not beating him because they did like 16s and 17s. So I started again on my Holy Paladin. I pushed on that, but it was so hard to find keys at the end of the week because everybody has done them already. So, and like I get, okay, Path of Exile is fun. Maybe if I play it, I'm sure I'm gonna have a blast. But it feels like one of those games that I'm gonna play it for a while, and then I'll burn out in like a week or two or something, and then
Yeah.
I'm gonna be done. Which is not a bad thing to do, but it just one of the aspects that I love about World of Warcraft is that continuity, that you keep playing and there's always
Yeah.
something coming, and
Yep.
there's always the next key to push, there's always a next patch, and then you're
Yep.
piling all of those achievements, all of those mounts. It feels like it's actually a world, it's a life, and you're living in it.
Yeah,
While
for sure.
Path of Exile is gonna be, yeah, I'm gonna play this for a few hours tonight and tomorrow, and then I'm gonna be done, even if it's
For sure.
even if it's fun or not. But yeah, I guess that's a that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's like Warcraft is home, and Path of Exile is like going to a fancy hotel in Las Vegas. It's
Yeah,
good for about a couple
it's
days, and
good
you
for the weekend,
come
right?
back home. Yeah.
Play in a poker tournament and then come back to your
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
daytime job and reality.
Yeah.
All right.
That's funny.
One more wild take that was released this week, and that this is not a Blizzard release, but it was a what if Mythic Plus used deaths instead of a timer. That's an interesting take. Maybe just spare a couple of minutes to give me your opinion on this. But the idea is we remove the timer from Mythic Plus dungeons, and we give you kind of like what Delves are right now, because you have a certain amount of lives there, right? So you can go in a group. That life count is, I think, it's shared in Delves. So you're basically in Delves, you're allowed to just die 5 times, and it doesn't matter if the number in Mythic Plus is going to be 5 more or less. It doesn't. That's a
Yeah.
different topic. But how would that change the experience? Do you think it's gonna be good?
No, I think it's just gonna go back to the way it was before, where people would just do big safe pulls, big but safe. Wait for cooldowns, do the next one. Wait for cooldowns, do the next one. Oh, we got 1 more minute till lust. We might as well just wait 1 more minute and do it. So I don't really like it. I think it's interesting idea, and I think they sent out an actual survey, didn't they? Didn't a
Yeah,
survey go out to ask people?
I'm gonna mention it in a second, by the way, because we didn't have that in our topics, but it's an interesting part. But um, I'm just gonna go back like on this topic with the deaths count, etc. Um, I think that if they do this, which probably they're not gonna, but if they do this, this is going to be a completely different game mode, completely different play style.
Yeah.
Because Mythic Plus is Mythic Plus because of the timer. Like, I don't like the timer, honestly. I don't like being rushed. I don't like depleting keys because we were like 30 seconds late. You know, that feels really bad. But this is what makes Mythic Plus what it is. If there's no
Yeah.
timer, it's going to be a completely different game mode. So
Exactly.
I think that if they want to pursue something like this, it has to be they can call it something else, like not Mythic Plus, and they can keep Mythic Plus with the timer and give you the option to do this different game mode. I don't know if they're gonna like make a separate rating for it and people are gonna push it in a different way, but I will say that back in the day when I played like 20 years ago, etc., in Vanilla and then Burning Crusade and a little bit of Wrath of the Lich King, the dungeons there were quite different because you would do those safe pools, but then there was this extra dynamics where, for example, we have this big pool of 4 or 5 mobs because 4 or 5 mobs was a big pool back then, you know, and then we would distribute the CCs. The mage would
Yep.
like sheep one of them so we don't
Yep.
have to fight it, and then we'd kill it after. That
Yep.
that was compelling as well. It's completely different than M plus, right? But it was a different type of gameplay. And I kind of enjoyed this type of dynamics that those dungeons had. So I wouldn't be opposed to see something like this, as long as they keep Mythic Plus, you know, as it is, and then people would just have an option to maybe push without the timer, but have a certain amount of deaths. And obviously, you will not be able to compare those type of runs with the Mythic Plus runs because they're going to be
Yeah.
completely different ideas behind them. But maybe just like as a separate game mode, maybe something that they can try out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a different mode would be welcome, and even maybe even a different set of dungeons or whatever. Like you said, like a delve. I think there's potential there, and those were fun. I do remember, and it was always fun. I always think of the outside of I was in Burning Crusades, the end of Burning Crusades, outside the Sunwell, there was a dungeon, and the boss, you got to a part where there was a boss, and it was like PvP, and you couldn't CC some of them, or you could CC them, but they could break the CC. I don't know, but I remember it being fun, and you had to execute that fight right, otherwise it was a wipe. That kind of stuff does bring a nice little interesting thing back to the game.
Yeah.
But there has to be something else, because if it's just like the same mobs, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. It's not super appealing to me personally, but I'm sure to some people it would be. But I think you're right. It would have to be kind of in its own little bucket, and develop kind of separately, that doesn't really impede or kind of impose on Mythic Plus, because as much griming or complaining and gripes are about Mythic Plus and this and that, it's still one of the big cornerstones of the current game and in its kind of existence, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
So to change it that big. And then the other thing is, people always get back to time anyway, because it's like, okay, yeah, you beat it, but we beat it 10 seconds faster. Even like in our raid, I heard my raid leader today talking about, oh, we did this one faster. We killed it in 108 pulls, and that's like above average. And so people do that, right? If it's like, even if it's not timed, it's still timed
Yeah. Yeah.
at the top, right? People are always gonna say, well, I did it better or faster than you. So
Yeah, they're gonna find ways to make it more
yeah,
competitive. That goes
yes.
back to just the example that I gave the other day when we're talking about rates. If they move the race to world first in a separate private server, so that we don't have to deal
Yep.
with splits, etc., and they let them compete there, people are still going to do a different race on the live servers, right? So
Oh yeah.
it's kind of like an interesting problem to have. So yeah, you mentioned the survey, by the way. I don't have anything to show on the screen for this, but you mentioned a survey that Blizzard sent out. I haven't done it personally, but it had basically a whole bunch of questions where they would ask you, would you play a class, for example, a necromancer, which is going to summon a whole bunch of pets, and that's how you're gonna play in World of Warcraft? Or there were like some type of gunslingers which would have 2 pistols and things like that. So I think that was interesting to read and speculate what they can do, like a battle mage, whatever. But I don't know if they're going to be actually introducing a new class entirely. I suspect that all of those things might be just new set of hero talents that are going to be added into existing classes already. As interesting as it was to read some of them. Are you familiar with this survey? Do you have any take?
No, I mean I had a different survey, and then I thought they also did the survey for the timer versus the death tolls.
Mhm.
So this other survey, I hadn't even heard about that. I think it's interesting, and I think the bigger picture when I you know I don't want to get off the subject because I think it's cool, but I think for me the bigger picture with the surveys in general is just the fact that like some of these tunings that they just announced a couple days before the patch, it's just they're listening, they're actually listening to the gripes and trying to figure out where's a happy medium, or what's a we don't want to make massive changes, but we do want to make small consistent changes, and I think that's good. And so when you see a survey, they want to know what the players, I where I work, I just sent out a survey today, and we're getting ready to do it's just something for Adobe Pro, but I don't want a bunch of we're on like a really old version, and we're going to a new version. And I want to know what the community wants. I'm going to do a webinar for the whole company. It's like, well, what do you want? What are you concerned about with Adobe? Like, let me help you. But if I don't know, and I think this is what's important to them, let me just throw that in there. It may not be interesting. So I can see Blizzard doing something the same, where it's like, well, instead of us thinking we think it's cool, let's ask the community and see what they think, because at the end of the day, we're the consumers, and they should be giving us what we want to consume. So I think it's a good, I think those steps are all good on Blizzard's behalf. This last year, I think we've
Yeah.
seen a lot.
As long as they take everything that we say with a pinch of salt, because we want some certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be good for the game. But yeah, it's a very, very positive to see that they're looking for feedback. They're sending out those surveys. They're making these changes mid patch, basically, or point 0.7 patch, etc.
Yep.
And yeah, this survey actually, there were like a lot of discussions because people were saying, "Oh, I'm gonna play Battle Mage if it's out," or something like that. So there was a lot of hype about it. Personally, I would be more hyped to see certain hero talents implemented to some of the classes. Specifically, let's say you get a shaman tank or something like that.
What a
Uh,
priest tank. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I would be more excited about that than having a new class. But I'm biased here, obviously. So we'll see what's gonna happen. That's probably gonna be something for the next expansion or the next two expansions.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted. And I guess we can end it today with one more topic, which is not going to be that positive, but they have an 8-hour scheduled maintenance for the release of the 11.0.7 patch, which is probably happening right now as you're listening to this podcast because it's very long. And this is a little bit obnoxious. So 8 hours is way too much in general. And I'm going to go back to something that happened when I came back to play the game at the end of BFA. I was basically there for the release of Shadowlands. And the release of Shadowlands was basically they didn't even bring down the servers. So you're in Ogrimmar, and then this guy comes and pops a quest, and you go into whatever that zone. What was it called? The mall or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just started playing, and it was seamless.
Yep.
Like it was maybe a little bit laggy because everybody was in Ogrimmar and they were waiting for the guy to show up with the quest, etc.
Yep. Yep.
But there was no downtime. There was no server restarts. There was no waiting for them to come back up. So to me, it's a little bit wild, and we've talked about this before, but to me, it's a little bit wild that they're still taking down their servers, what's left for 8 hours, because obviously they have the capability to do those things live. They've done it in the past, so it's not like they cannot do it, but for some reason, they're just gonna keep punishing us with those maintenances. And this one is 8 hours. It can easily probably go up to like even more because that also happened in the past. And yeah, I don't know. That's not a good way to end the podcast, but that's our last topic.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes, right? So there's new area, there's new gear, the Crest system's getting changed. I'm sure they're gonna want, I don't know if any of this was on PTR.
It was. Most
And
of it
so
was.
oh, it was. Okay, good. Okay,
Oh,
so
the
so
most
they
recent changes, I don't think like the class tuning and maybe the dungeon changes, but like the crests and the ring and everything that was testable on the PTR.
they were okay, good. Okay, cool. Yeah, but I think who knows what they're doing when the servers are down. I got no clue because, like you said, there's no reason for it. I don't think it's going to be up at 3. I mean, maybe 5, but
Maybe
I,
5. You know, I
I
would
don't.
be fine
Definitely
with
not
those
early.
maintenances if they could get it done in the maintenance. But as you said, there's a lot of new things. So I'm gonna make a bet with you that from Tuesday, when this is released in the NA, there's gonna be at least one more day when they're gonna have a
Oh yeah,
scheduled maintenance to fix some of the stuff that they basically managed to mess up.
yeah,
And this is
yeah.
even more frustrating than having a long maintenance, because now you're basically screwing up the whole playtime and the whole play week. And yeah, but it is what it is. So hopefully, when you're watching this, the maintenance is already over.
Hopefully.
And I think that's all we have for today's episode. If you have any last words or topics that you want to mention.
Oh,
Oh,
my dog's going crazy.
all
She's
right.
ready for
So
her nighttime.
let's take care of the dog, guys. Check out the links below. You can subscribe to the W Podcast YouTube channel that we have, which has all the content available for you with little clips and extra episodes. And we are going to see you guys in the next episode. Until then, bye bye and take care.
Bye, everybody.